Good evening. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's working. Welcome to the school committee meeting of Tuesday, October 24th. If you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence for our troops in harm's way. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Prior to this meeting, we had an executive session. No votes were taken. May I have a motion, please, to seal executive session minutes of October 10th and October 24th, 2023?
So moved. Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Unanimous, 6-0. Please let the record reflect that Ms. Kelly is not able to join us tonight. Otherwise, all members are present. In case of emergency, we have 2 doors here, 1 door there, and we meet over at the admin building to wait out the emergency. Correspondence, we had a couple of email correspondence as follow-up from our last meeting. One was raising questions about our comment and public comment processes and Rhode Island law. And we clarified that a little bit with our lawyer, but we also need to put our meeting policy back to the subcommittee, which is what I would hope that maybe you guys would take another look at that policy. So the question raised was, can the school committee engage in public comment? And while it is not illegal to do so, it is highly advised against by the Rhode Island school attorneys, because one, if you engage with one, you should engage with all. And 2, they were talking about if we started down a slippery slope of talking about an issue like budgeting that wasn't on the agenda, then people would have a problem with it not being on the agenda specified if we were talking about something. So to clarify that correspondence does need us to make that maybe clearer in our policy, which really only deals with public comment at the meeting. So that was a section on that. A second piece of correspondence from a Portsmouth resident also questioned some of the requirements that we have with regards to background information checks for volunteers and coaches. And I've referred that to our attorney. They attend the first meeting of every month, and we'll have that on the next month's agenda for the attorney to address, and HR, the differences in those. So just wanted to share the follow-up on that. The second thing I had was on Thursday, October 12th, there was a school committee chairs meeting hosted by the Rhode Island Association of School Committees. And the handout that I gave you here that you all had at your seat was the main presentation on the agenda, which is showing now how they can do financial profiles of the different districts. And they offered to come out and do trainings for every district on how to use this and things that you can play with and look at with regards to budget. And they were very eager to come out and do trainings. I think the district, the admin staff is doing one here in the near future, right? So I was going to suggest to the finance subcommittee, maybe we might want to host one of those trainings for Portsmouth to take a little bit deeper dive for everybody who is interested in doing that. And that would also count for towards your professional development requirement of 6 hours. So maybe it might be an hour and a half, if that's of interest to people. I certainly would like to do it.
Like BD hours.
Yeah, good. Okay. So we'll work to set that up. The main focus of the meeting was kind of an update of where they see some of the legislature movement with regards to education this coming year. And we have on our agenda under business to discuss legislative priorities. One of the big things that they see as a push, and actually we'll probably talk about this more in legislative updates, but I'll mention it here, was they're hoping to get school construction reimbursement before the projects are complete, particularly for some of the districts that have these multi-million-dollar projects that you have to wait until the entire project's completed before you start getting reimbursement. And so what they think they're going to try and do is allow some partial reimbursement is kind of what they were looking at here. And he thought there seemed to be a lot of support for that. The other thing, which this has now come up in our district as well, is there seems to be a pretty big push for basically free lunch and breakfast perhaps. Massachusetts has done that. And so that may be a big legislative push this year, which is something that we would have to discuss. And then the final issue we need to think about is the formula reform that they were talking about may be addressed this year. And the real issue, and here I think we also have to look for our admin staff on guidance, was how to measure poverty, because they used to do it with free and reduced lunch. Now they've done it with like automatic SNAP enrollment, and that plays into the funding formula a lot. So we need to come up with something on that. They also asked for any professional development recommendations for this coming year. I mentioned that we had our climate and culture subcommittee that was new this year, so maybe something on that. But is there anything else we need that people would be interested in that we could send back to RIASC as a suggestion?
Charter school,
Why would we have professional development on charter schools?
because the charter schools are being funded significantly great. They're getting positive funding where we're receiving negative funding, and the results, the RICAS, SAT, and PSAT scores are horrible. And why should this continue? It's ridiculous. It's been going on now for years.
So
I think there's only Blackstone Valley, I believe, when it first got started, maybe in the first year or the second year, had reasonably decent comparative scores, but not since that I can recall. And they got $21 million more. Every one of them got additional monies. When does this stop? When do
Okay.
we recognize that the charter schools are failing?
So maybe a legislative agenda, but also professional development is what
Right.
you're thinking on discussion. All right.
Well, I'd be interested. My understanding is any town, any municipality can start a charter school. Why would they, what prevents you from getting the approval from RIDE to start a charter school? And then the evidence indicates that virtually none of them are working.
Okay. All right. Any other topics that people would like to have? Nothing coming to mind? Okay, if you think of anything, you can obviously email Tim Duffy directly or send it to me and I'll send it on to him. And then the final bit here was the announcement about the National School Board Association annual meeting, which I'm wondering if they have a typo here on the date, because I'm just looking at this and it says April 2023. I'm thinking they must mean April 2024. So that's something that we have done once, maybe twice. There's been some members going to that. So just mentioning that.
Yeah,
put on
it's April of 2024.
April of 2024. Okay. I think it's in New Orleans.
New Orleans, yep.
Yeah. And that was it from RIASC. So yes to the professional development, and like I said, we can talk about the legislative activities more. Okay, thank you. Moving on to our favorite part of the evening, which is always student recognitions and staff recognitions. We have some very, very awesome ones tonight. Dr. Kenworthy.
Thank you. you have this certificates, right?
I got them right here. I
Okay,
got it. Yeah.
All right, so this evening we are recognizing several PHS seniors currently for some significant achievement that would have happened, although we didn't learn about it until recently, right around this time last year. So in the fall of junior year, there is a qualifying version of the PSAT exam that is used for the National Merit Scholarship. So this is a pretty prestigious honor. So tonight we have 2 semifinalists and 2 commended students to recognize. So just for some reference, an estimated 1.3 million students took the PSAT last fall. And for the semifinalists that we're going to recognize, these students would have scored in the top 1% of all of those test takers. So this qualifies them as semifinalists to move into the scholarship version. And they will be able to do that, and we'll learn more over the next few months. But this evening, for that achievement, we wanted to recognize Colum Dooley and Eric Hurst. It is. All right, so best of luck to you both in the finalist portion of this scholarship competition. So, and again, this varies from year to year. Sometimes we have, a handful of students as we're recognizing this evening, sometimes just 1 or 2. So the next level down, if you will, but still a very significant accomplishment. So again, of those 1.3 million students who took the PSAT last fall, students who score in the top 3% of all test takers, although they're not eligible for the scholarship competition, they earn commended student status. So this evening we are recognizing Mel Benson and Benjamin Norris. Congratulations. I believe our juniors taking it this week. They took it yesterday. Okay, so hopefully a year from now, we'll be happy. Yes.
Again, I think on behalf of the entire district and Portsmouth, those achievements really do the community proud. So you should take a lot of pride in that. That's a great outcome. And we also understand if you don't want to stick around for the rest of the meeting, but really congratulations again. And you can go if you want to. I'm very serious. Usually we tend to have a little exodus after the recognitions. Good job, guys. Congrats. Yes, yes. All right. Moving on, we have our subcommittee updates. On October 11th, the safety subcommittee met and reviewed the district safety plan. Health and wellness subcommittee is Isabel Kelly. She's not here tonight. Was there a member of admin that would be able to give that report?
Sure, I didn't prepare anything, but just a quick update. We did meet, all of our schools reported out on things that we're doing to move forward in the areas of health and wellness. We have moved forward with a new health and health curriculum. So Joel DeMarco was able to speak to that. In addition to that, we've been having some conversations on our school lunch program in ways that we can make improvements with some of the food that we're serving our students. So we'll continue to have those meetings. Thanks.
Thank you. District Building Committee, that's Ms. Blank and myself. The big news is, and hopefully that's still on, the road should be done in time for homecoming, right? We'll have that, the grand opening there. So the parade will go forward, which is great. The Melville roof replacement, hopefully all the leaks are fixed, everything's done there. Yeah. And the bathrooms are just in a couple of little punch list areas, but those are also done. There was a review of the summer 2024 projects, which I'm happy to share the backup here with everybody. And then there was also an overview of a revised plan for the Portsmouth Middle School bathrooms, which would be the last big set of projects that would occur summer 2025. Right? Did I miss anything, Mr. Diero? Okay. So if anybody would like to see that backup, pass that along. Climate and Culture Subcommittee, Ms. Skian.
We had our first climate and culture subcommittee meeting. We had about 15 parents attend and great representation from all the schools in terms of the principals and the leadership of the district. We discussed our purpose and vision, and Dr. Kenworthy went over the district goal that pertains to this subcommittee. And then we heard updates from the 4 schools about efforts they're undertaking that are in this purview. So it was really exciting to hear about a lot of follow-up from Rachel's challenge, really good efforts, new efforts with the new principals at the middle school and high school in particular. And then we discuss some recommendations and set the next date, which will be December 14th at 6 o'clock at the middle school. So hopefully more can attend, and we'll be following up on the pulse survey that just went out this week.
Okay, any questions on the subcommittee updates?
I just want to say thank you to Hathaway and Principal Little for hosting it. It was fantastic to get such great turnout from parents as well as staff here. It really feels like it's going to be productive, and I appreciate everyone showing up, and it was great to get to then walk around and see some of the culture at the school. Thank you.
And the next one's at the middle school, I believe, correct? Yeah, great. Public comment. Is there any public comment? I think I saw one when I went up to get the. Thank you. Mr. Jackson? Oh, Dan Sanderson. Sorry, looking like a J. Welcome. Please state your name and address for the record.
Dan Sanderson, 147 Richard Drive, Portsmouth. And again, I'd like to thank the committee, the administration for the hard work that you put in for the children's community. 4 weeks ago, I spoke before this committee about concerns we had regarding unfair treatment of coaches and volunteers in our football program. 2 weeks ago, I came back to ask, why did this happen to our football program and the volunteers who support it? And we had a meeting 2 days later, the superintendent, deputy superintendent, and principal. As a result of that meeting, the deputy superintendent called a meeting the next day with herself, the principal, AD, and football coach in attendance. They discussed the facts of the incidents in question. At the end of the meeting, there was a decision to reinstate 5 of the 6 coaches who were dismissed. One coach, my understanding, was chosen not to pursue the matter any further. For many people, this would have been a cause for celebration, getting those coaches back, but justice has prevailed. The wrong had been righted. And the coaches can continue to support the program. However, the answer to the why of this attack on the program is an answer. And I would ask again, and further, why has no disciplinary action been taken? Who will be held accountable for the necessary pain caused to the community leaders and to their families? how we go about getting leadership that we can build trust with the community. There have been many comments made about culture surrounding sports in this community. So I asked, is there a conversation in the background between members of this committee, superintendent, principal, and athletic director about how to take some sports programs down a notch? Or did the athletic director do this on his own in the decision to remove these coaches? I would urge the members of the committee to be prudent. School was not open for a week to the point before we found the town in uproar. The spotlight's very bright and doesn't seem close to dimming. Every single sport and extracurricular activity in our town is supported first and foremost by the parents who've been with these kids for many seasons before they get to high school. We won't accept a loser attitude, and no member of the community who works in the interest of our kids, as we just seen. I urge the committee to fully investigate how and why this happened and make the changes necessary so we can have leadership that our kids be proud of. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay. Thank you very much. Superintendent's update.
Thank you,
Dr.
Doc.
Kenworthy.
Thank you, Dr. Copeland. So I will start, as I always do, with personnel updates since our last meeting. I did approve the hiring of our new coordinator of student services at the elementary level, Amanda Rose. This is replacing, I can't get Dina's last name, Dina Duffy, who left us after the start of the school year. So we're looking forward. I believe next week, Ms. Rose will start officially. Okay, yes. Ms. Shea knows the date by heart. Also also accepted the resignation of Gwendolyn Topa as a paraprofessional at Hathaway. And then I know last meeting, I was reading what I was hoping was the final version of the football coaching list, but as I will allude to in my further comments, again, based on the meeting that we had and some follow-up that Dr. Viveros led for me, I do have two adjustments to that list. The first, Kyle McDonald, is just moving from a volunteer to a paid status. So there's just one item we were missing in order to do that for the last meeting. So he's, again, been on the staff and will just now move into paid status. And I did approve the Brad Landerville joining the staff as a volunteer assistant. So moving on to district updates. So since our last meeting on October 11th, Dr. Copeland and I attended the official plaque unveiling for the PHS Kate Grana Auditorium. Although the official opening of the auditorium took place right before COVID, there was a delay in getting these plaques, which honor previous music and theater directors, as well as key donors ordered and installed. So it was a great afternoon to catch up with some of the key people who helped make these amazing improvements to our PHS auditorium happen. And on October 18th, all PSD schools celebrated Unity Day, which has become a national day to wear orange and pledge support to end bullying. Activities throughout our schools included advisory lessons at middle and high school, anti-bullying posters throughout all of our schools' activities, anti-bullying pledges, and kindness chains. This week, we are happy to welcome back Mrs. Danielle Laurie to her role as Melville principal. So it is great to see her back in that role. And one final thank you to Mr. Joao Arruda, who filled in for us during Mrs. Laurie's absence. Just a reminder to the committee, tomorrow I will be starting a brief family medical leave and do hope to be back by the end of next week. I will keep you updated. And of course, in my absence, Dr. Viveros will be acting superintendent. So update on the football parent meeting, which took place since our last meeting. So thank you to Dr. Viveros, Dr. Heath, and the football families who came out on that evening on October 12th. And Mrs. Blank and Mr. Ferber were also in attendance that night. It was a productive dialogue that did help to clarify some information. The following day, which I did have a scheduled day off, Dr. Viveros, representing me, Mr. Heath, and Mr. Corey met with Coach McDonald to finalize a few of the remaining items, and you saw some reference to those in the personnel updates. I am currently leading a work group reviewing our policies and procedures related to the hiring, onboarding, and evaluation process for athletic coaches, and will develop further recommendations for improvements. I did want to point out, I have gotten some questions about Veterans Day observance this year. So the state of Rhode Island this year is observing Veterans Day on Monday, November 13th. So when we set our school calendar, as most districts did, we set that to, at the time, what we had was the state calendar, which the Department of Education is also using. The federal observance of Veterans Day this year is going to be Friday, November 10th. So unfortunately, it's one of those years where the federal and state observance, for whatever reason, do not match up. But again, I did double check, and every school district that I'm aware of is observing it on the Monday, the 13th, as we are. I wanted to highlight the efforts of our IT department this evening. We recently received confirmation that we will be receiving round 3 funding from the Federal Communication Commission's Emergency Connectivity Grant. We were awarded a grant award of a little over $200,000, and this will help to offset purchases for one-to-one Chromebooks and other devices for next school year. So it'll be a huge help to us as we're heading into our budget process. So kudos. He couldn't make it this evening, but Mr. Steve Costa, who's usually here, our Director of Technology, and Mr. Jacob Karen, our Network Manager, were instrumental in completing this application and working with various vendor partners to make it happen. Also wanted to thank the Portsmouth Public Education Foundation, which recently distributed over 30 grants to PSD teachers to support projects and enrichment opportunities for students. We are grateful to this organization for their continued support for our students and teachers. And the board this year is planning a spring fundraiser. And as I have more information, I'll be sure to pass that along. And finally, and we've talked a little bit about homecoming coming up this Saturday. So the parade, if you are attending, noon arrival is recommended, and the parade should kick off at 12:30. It will end on Memorial Drive, which will be our official opening of that new and improved roadway. And then the game will start at 1:30, and homecoming dance for PHS students later that evening. And if you want to make a full day on Saturday, Melville, I neglected to mention here, but Melville is having its fall festival in the morning as well. So it could be a very fun-filled day in Portsmouth. So that is everything I had, unless there are any questions.
Mine is just a further point of clarification, and it probably is, I'm probably the one that gets most affected by it as a state employee. Unlike the federal government that splits the weekend, Saturday gets Friday, Sunday gets Monday, the state does not celebrate holidays prior to the holiday happening. So all weekend holidays always will be observed on Monday. So it's something that will forever happen.
Yeah,
So
I
we'll
just
do it
wanted to
for-
mention it because I don't know if anyone else was, but I started to get questions. You know, I went back and double checked just to make sure, but it's just one of those years where it doesn't match up.
State employees, we always get messed up schedules when it comes with, when we have kids in the system.
Thank you. Oh, Ms. Blank.
Just a comment. I just appreciate being able to be invited to the football meeting with the parents. It was great to be able to hear directly from them to ensure that we're hearing the voices, which is critical to me, to make sure people are being heard, and I want to make sure I'm getting the message clearly. Sorry. And then I also just agree with what you had stated, that just more investigation is needed into just that process.
Yep.
And the need for clarification.
Already underway.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we ought to be sending out a certificate of appreciation for Mr. Costa and Mr. Jacobs at our next one, because this is round 3. I think this is probably a total of what,
Yeah, I
600,000?
think we've gotten each round, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so that has been a huge help to the taxpayers of Portsmouth and the kids to get the Chromebooks one-on-one in a timely manner. So we really appreciate those efforts. So, all right. So tonight we have a light business agenda because we knew we had two big presentations. So Dr. Viveros, are you doing the state assessment results
Yep,
first?
yep.
Okay.
Yep, good evening, everyone. So tonight, like you had just said, we have two teaching and learning presentations. This first one's going to focus on our 2023 district state assessment data, followed by a CTE update from Paige Claire. So I'll be reviewing RICAS, the Rhode Island Comprehensive Assessment, the PSAT Preliminary Scholastic Aptitude Test, and the SAT Scholastic Aptitude Test, and NGSA Next Generation Science Assessment. So this data that I'm going to be sharing with you will all be there. I'll be reviewing our scores along with state averages and how we compare. With me this evening, I have administrators from each of the schools. So at the end of this presentation, we'll take questions. All right, so first up we have our district RICAS scores in math, with 51.7% of our students meeting or exceeding expectations and a 2.8 percentage point increase. We continue to see improvements each year. We've increased by 6.6 percentage points from our pre-pandemic 2018-2019 school year. When comparing our math data to the state, we're 22.1 percentage points above the state average. Right, next up, looking at our district ELA RICAS data, we had a very slight 0.8 percentage point increase in our overall proficiency. A decline in proficiency can be expected when implementing a new curriculum, which we did last year. So having this slight increase is hopeful for our future assessment data points. When comparing our ELA data to the state, we're 16.7 percentage points above the state average. Right, so we'll start with taking a look at Hathaway. In the area of math, Hathaway's RICAS scores had a slight decrease, going from 56.5% of students meeting or exceeding expectation to 54.5%. In the area of ELA, there was a slight increase, with 53.1% of our Hathaway students meeting or exceeding expectations. Next up is Melville. Right, in the area of math, Melville's RICAS scores had a positive increase, going from 51.9% of students meeting or exceeding expectations to 58.1%. In the area of ELA, there was also a positive increase, going from 50.8% of students meeting or exceeding expectation to 57.3%. Nice job, Melville. Right. In the area of math, PMS's RICAS scores increased, going from 46.3% of students meeting or exceeding expectations to 50.1%. This is up 7 percentage points from the pre-pandemic 2018-2019 school year. In the area of ELA, there was a slight increase, with 49.8% of our middle school students meeting or exceeding expectations. All right, now we're on to our PSAT math data. So looking at these data points, we had a decline in proficiency by 3.3 percentage points, with 46.7% of our students meeting or exceeding expectations. As a district, we are 19.5 percentage points higher than the state average of 27.2%. Looking at our ELA PSAT data, we also had a decline in proficiency of 4.4 percentage points, with 73.3% of our students meeting or exceeding expectations. Similar to math, our ELA PSAT scores place us above the state average by 14.1 percentage points. In the SAT math, there was a considerable decrease of 11.6 percentage points. With a proficiency percentage of 44, our district still remains higher than the state average of 25.3% of students meeting or exceeding expectations. The high school is aware of this decline, and they're diving into the data to see where our areas of need are and our next steps, so we can intervene and hopefully not see similar results next year. right, our ELA SAT scores. We had a decrease in proficiency of 4.1 percentage points. This decrease did not come as a surprise, as similar to the RICAS. We just started to implement a new curriculum, so we are hopeful for an increase in these scores. With 70.5% of our students at or above proficiency, these scores are 21.4 percentage points above the state average. Okay. We continue to make tremendous gains in our next generation science assessment. As a district, we've increased our overall proficiency from 55.9% to 63.1%. At the middle school, we increased from 53 to 60.1%. And at our high school, we increased from 61.3 to 69.9%. I'm extremely proud of the students, and I applaud all of our teachers' efforts in the areas of science. As a district, we've invested a great deal of time and effort into ensuring that we have all of the necessary resources to be competitive in the sciences. So these scores truly support these efforts. And just overall, I did want to share that when you take a look at all of these areas that we tested in, Portsmouth has ranked from 3rd through 6th in the state in all areas. So that concludes my data update. I do have additional information as far as those rankings in the backup material. And now I'll open it up to questions. And
Did
I
you
also
want to have
welcome-
the school say anything, or is it just they're here for questions?
yeah,
if
I
we
think
have it?
that if
Just for questions?
just we'll engage them in the questions.
All right, looking right, left, Mr. Payero.
Say,
was
Dr. Rivera, so you know what my question,
Oh, I'm sorry.
what was that?
Blank was first. Okay. Take it away.
It's great to see the improvements with science and math. And it's great to see, and I appreciate the data of pre-pandemic to be able to see those comparisons. With the RICAS, I see that we're bouncing back and we're above the pre-pandemic numbers. Question though, with the PSATs and the SAT numbers, it seems like we're still struggling in those areas. Can you help me understand a little bit of the difference between what RICAS is assessing or what the PSAT and where do we, how can we continue to improve and help the students?
Sure. So I can speak to that a bit, and then I can bring the high school team up as well. Just something for you to take note of is that we have increased the participation rate. And so that naturally also influences our proficiency as well, because we're assessing more students and we want to be able to do that. So that said, I think that we've been having lots of conversations. I look at Jeff, and Jody, because this has been pretty, I would say, consistent in all of our conversations as far as what are our next steps. We're discussing each of these curriculums. Now, we do have a high quality curriculum in place in math, but we're up that curriculum and what our next steps are in the area of math. In ELA, again, we just started that. So our hope is that we're going to start to continue to see those increases. We've been discussing having the possibility of having some after school, like prepping for our SATs and our PSATs. Not sure if you want to pick up on anything else that we've been kind of having conversations.
You just need to
with.
come to the mic.
You gotta make sure it's on.
How's that? Got me? Cool. Yeah, it's green. Good. Apologize, I'm a little stuffy tonight. So Dr. Viveras just hit a lot of the things that we've had conversations about and noticing the trends kind of heading the wrong direction, some of our PSAT and SAT data. Speaking specifically to math, one of the big conversations that we're having right now as we speak is we all know that the high school schedule is up for a potential revamp for next year. So we've done a pretty in-depth review of about 200 top performing public high schools across the country to see what types of schedules these institutions are running, everywhere from Utah to Colorado to Florida to Massachusetts. And one of the things that seems relatively pervasive throughout is built-in intervention throughout the school day. So there's a lot of different ways that school districts tend to do that, whether it be coupled with their advisory periods or built into some specific block. I know we used to have Pride Block here, which some beloved, some not so much. But maybe looking at things like that to be built into the schedule so that specifically for our math students, with our math students in mind, we do have math interventionists at the high school. But sometimes scheduling can be difficult with some of those, those yellow band kids, which is really what, directive wise, I think we should be targeting those kids that are partially meeting expectations. You'd recognize that there's a fairly large amount. They actually make up the largest component of that slide scale. And that's those are kids that are right on the fence of meeting those proficiencies and raising those scores to where they need to be and hopefully turning the tide. So we're really looking at not leaving the red behind it by any means, but those tend to be our tier 3 intervention kids. And we have a program like TAP, that therapeutic academic program that's kind of finding its own footing. But then additionally, some of those interventions that could potentially be integrated into the school day on a weekly rotating basis so that kids can get that extra help that they need in school to hopefully really hit on those skills that are helping them, not necessarily get to where we need to be. So, yeah.
No, that's great to hear that we're,
Mhm.
don't need to reinvent the wheel and absolutely looking at others that are succeeding and how we can adapt that. So that's great to hear. And I do recognize that we're bottoming out with, the rate of decline is less than previous years. So absolutely recognize it's a difficult ship to correct, but appreciate your hard work in looking into that.
Thank you. And it's definitely a shared effort. I should kind of highlight the other two as well, that, having Jeff as part of the administrative team and his background in mathematics has been super helpful to just have perspective, having Miss Piliotis in the department chair role, bringing a little bit of an outside perspective. She was in Barrington prior to being in Portsmouth. So she has some different perspective on the way that the curriculum should be delivered. So this is her first year in a mathematics department chair role. And then having Jody doing teaching and learning. I'm really excited about the team that we have and looking forward to the results next year because I think we'll be able to make some positive gains. So,
And just sorry, one more question. Do we have an ELA interventionist?
yes, we do.
We do. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Gian, are you?
Just because I'm not as familiar with the new ELA curriculum, would that be in line with SATs? Like SAT evaluations are just like kind of.
So the new ELA curriculum, it's a high quality curriculum approved through RIDE to be able to support our students. We have the curriculum we're using with our elementary students is called Wonders, and we're using Study Sync from grades 7 through 12. So no, actually 6 through 12.
But I mean, I understand if you bring on a new curriculum, there might be like a slight delay, but is it really going to necessarily like improve SAT scores? Because SAT scores are, I would think, like kind of more like global skills.
Right. So the hope is that they're touching on all of those core standards that we're addressing in all of our grades. So the hope is that, yes.
The foundation, yeah.
And I was just going to point out, even the PSAT and SAT now are aligned to the Common Core standards. So again, that's when you hear us talk about curriculum, we talk about green lit curriculum from the Department of Ed. So any curriculum now in ELA, math, science, particularly that we're putting in front of students, we have to make sure it's considered what they call green lit, meaning that it's fully aligned to Common Core standards. So everything now from RICAS all the way up through SAT is aligned to those standards as well.
Okay, and then that last slide for the next generation science assessment. It was helpful to have a comparison to statewide for the other evaluation tools, but is there any ability to compare this to like other districts who have?
Yep. So if you look in the backup, I did do a very detailed comparison of each of these.
Okay, thanks.
I think Dr. Viveris is being very diplomatic and not calling out other districts
Right.
with some of that slide. So,
Yes.
but I think for most of the scores, if you've looked at the backup, we're in 1 through, or 2 through 3.
Yeah,
Pretty
like-
much all the way through.
Yeah, and even with those declines in PSAT, SAT, so that if you look at
Still
the
rates up.
rankings, right, it means everyone else saw for the most part, a little bit of a decline as well. And so at the state level, just, the talk there is that now with those, juniors, seniors at the high school level, we're starting to see those testing results from the COVID
COVID,
effect and
Right.
everything. So hopefully, again, everything that we've put in place since will just work its way through.
Mr. Piero?
Fred can go ahead of me.
Oh, Fred?
I'm just gonna keep the tradition going at this point. He's fine.
The science scores are obviously pretty good. We made significant improvement, but for years Portsmouth has had a pretty strong science program. I think often we've been the #1 science department in the state, I think. So my question is, with regard to ELA, and what are we doing in science in terms of our effort that can't be introduced into ELA and math? I mean, what's going on there?
If I had that answer, I think we'd be in a really great place. I really feel like all of the efforts, I mean, we've made tremendous efforts and what I think are gains, especially like post-pandemic. I think it's important for us to remember too, that mathematics was the most difficult content area for us to be able to support our students virtually. And then coming back from that was definitely a challenge in mathematics. But I feel like we're in a position right now where as a district, the curriculum we have in place, I think that the administration we have in place and all of our departments and the supports, we're going to continue to move forward. I'm confident of that.
Oh, thank you. So Heather, can we go to the first one? And I just want to kind of, and I appreciate Doc, for those that don't know, I will always compare pre-pandemic levels to what we're currently at. So I know
absolutely.
that this is where that, and also trying to keep presentations as short as humanly possible. So I appreciate that. And so Doctor, you kind of like hit the point that I was most concerned about, and that's the yellow. And kind of like, it's funny that it happened last year. We were talking about the budget woes and how we got and go through this trend. We're here pre-pandemic. We have this dip, which we expected, but then we're going up, and it's I think it was on some of them, and I'm not gonna, like, let's say for instance, RICAS data for the for ELA, where there's a 0.8% increase year to year, but when you're going 4 years back, you're at almost 6%. I'm using ELA as an example.
Okay, all right.
So let me just use that as an example. With a increase of, so that one was pretty steady, but many of them, there was an increase in that yellow area, but our percentage rates actually stayed the same with the number of people that are actually being tested. So it's like, all right, in the bell curve of students, is it just the far ends of students that we're losing when it comes to the reduction in number of students that are taking the test? But what is it that we're missing? And this is, I'm not pointing fingers and saying that we're missing something. And what can we do, or what have we done, or what data do we currently have right now, since we do so much assessments on these students, to kind of see that we're actually continuing that trend upwards, given I will never use the statewide as a comparison to all our students. And because I know as a district, we do so much more work and much better quality. So what do we have data currently that shows that we are continuing that trend in a like more micro snapshot throughout the year that can dictate or could possibly show that a potential improvement for 23-24?
Yeah, so our coaches at all of the schools have been really diving deep into the data and looking at at each of the questions that students were asked, looking at those answers, being able to use that data to address like that learning area. Now, for the upcoming presentation, because we were supposed to be doing this data presentation in November, my hope was, we've been having conversations about having the coaches and some of the department heads that are really working at drilling down that data, be able to speak and to actually address exactly what you just asked.
It's music to my ears.
Yeah.
One more question. I'm just thinking about the question that was just asked about the discrepancies in ELA. And I think sort of anecdotally, one of the things I'm hearing a lot from ELA teacher friends is that post-pandemic, the habit of reading for pleasure and just free reading in general has really declined significantly. And I'm wondering if you're seeing that in our district here too.
Yeah.
And yeah.
We are.
Okay. That's too bad. Because that's really important. Yeah. All right.
So to be continued.
The book fair was very successful. The kids were super excited
That's
about
great.
that.
Any other questions? Well, thank you. I know it's a lot of
Thank
number
you.
crunching, and I think it was good to get RIDE to finally get this data released so
Yeah.
that people could start working on
And
it.
again, it was a quick turnaround on our part, but we just wanted to get it out here sooner
Yeah.
than later. So
Yeah,
Four FOIA requests every year.
I know, I know.
thank you.
All right, thank you. Moving on to our second presentation.
Right, Paige.
You can start your stopwatch. Ready? Yes, it's you with the questions, though.
No, you have more time. Don't do that.
Okay, so good evening. My name is Paige Kerwin-Clare. I'm the Director of College and Career Readiness, and this is Miss Diane Crease, my colleague. I want to start this evening's presentation with a snapshot highlighting the success of our students from the class of 2023. Oh. That's that. Approximately 78% of our graduating class went on to a four-year college and 14% enrolled in a two-year college. 11 graduating students joined the workforce after graduation, and 4 of our graduates joined branches of the military. And despite what we just hear about testing and all the other things, I think that we have a big congratulations to our class that just graduated. So tonight, Mrs. Diane Crease and I will highlight the work we're doing with our current CTE pathways and share the proposed plans for the new pathways moving forward. In addition, we have Ms. Nicole Noble joining us to share the sequence of courses and curriculum components for our bioscience pathway. You can also bring up NGSA because we're so lucky to have her here. Okay, so the first priority of our strategic plan addresses the need for academic rigor for all students. The Portsmouth School Department has committed to providing equitable opportunities to prepare each and every student for success in a college and career after graduation. Career technology education programs provide students with the academic and technical skills, the knowledge and training necessary to succeed in future careers and to become lifelong learners. The goal of the Rhode Island Department of Education is that 77% of all Rhode Island high school graduates will have earned college credits and/or industry credentials prior to graduation. Rhode Island has seen tremendous growth in the development of CTE programs. Since the 2015-2016 school year, the number of approved CTE pathways in Rhode Island has increased by 91%. Since 2016-2017, the number of students enrolling in CTE programs has increased by 145%. So our programs help meet critical workforce needs within our region and throughout Rhode Island. Through a highly dedicated and well-trained staff, outstanding facilities, and the support of our stakeholders, Portsmouth CTE pathways ensure that every student has the opportunity to explore career pathways and programs while earning industry-recognized credentials. So we continue to explore opportunities to strengthen our community partnerships for students to experience work-based learning and meet the 80-hour minimum requirement. Sorry, Heather. The following slides show the breakdown of enrolled students for each of the established pathways in each grade level for both Portsmouth and Little Compton students, as well as students from out of district. The surrounding districts include students from Newport, Middletown, Tiverton, and Bristol Warren. Out of the 792 students enrolled in Portsmouth High School, 262 of them are enrolled in a CTE program, so that's 33%. Note that the numbers for freshmen for Portsmouth and Little Compton seem to be underrepresented in this data. So although they're enrolled in the first level courses for each of the pathways, the Freshman Academy team encouraged students, incoming freshman students, to explore various interests prior to committing to a program of studies. So these numbers will increase as the students have these experiences and meet with their school counselors and teachers. Our CTE enrollment at Portsmouth High School is reflective of the trends we're seeing throughout the state. Of note is that We have doubled our out-of-district enrollment in the last 4 years, with 26 students enrolled in the 2021 school year and 52 students currently enrolled in the 2023-24 school year. The Academy for Engineering Design continues to have the highest student enrollment. But again, here's an example of how the numbers don't accurately portray the interest in the pathway. For example, Engineering Essentials is the first of 3 required courses for that pathway. And we are currently offering two sections of that. So out of the 49 students enrolled in this first level course, 47 are current freshmen. And this data shows that only 8 students have formally committed to the pathway. So as I previously said, and think of it as like similar to students who enter college with an undecided major, our students will have the opportunity to experience all potential areas of interest prior to committing to a program of studies. The criminal justice pathway is currently a locally approved pathway, so you'll only see data from Portsmouth and Little Compton students reflected. However, what we are noticing a trend, it's a highly engaging program, and we have numerous students from out of district who are duly enrolled in an approved CTE pathway as well as our criminal justice pathway. Okay, so this is the really exciting part. Really exciting. Okay, so after completing a comprehensive local needs assessment and speaking with our industry partners and students, we identified several pathways that we wanted to pursue at Portsmouth High School. We completed a self-assessment in each of these areas and submitted the forms to the Rhode Island Department of Education for approval. Last week, we received the approval to move forward with the next step of the application process with proposed pathways in the areas of criminal justice, bioscience, music production, and business. I know, it's great. So Diane is going to speak briefly about the components in each of our proposed pathways.
All right, I will start with the business pathway. Let's see, okay. So the key thing with this is the intro to business and marketing had been, we had the intro to business was a semester course, we've expanded it to the full year. And then our proposed course is the financial accounting. So we're in the process of making sure that our teachers will be qualified then to teach this. So it's concurrent course through URI. And then the last one is the business leadership and entrepreneurship course, which we've had in place for a while, and that's our capstone. And then, of course, there are other electives that you can choose. The credential for this one is the transcribed post-secondary credit, which is what they'll receive through the financial accounting. And also with the introduction to business and marketing, they're going to receive a 20-hour training in Excel, because I know I mentioned last year too, that when we asked our industry partners, you know, what do you think students really need? They said if they had training in Excel, they would be marketable right away. So with Excel in the first level course, then they're able to utilize that through the rest of the sequence. Okay, and then the Certiport certification also would work as their credential. So they've reached both aspects of it. See, there I know Claire mentioned about the work-based learning. What we're looking for is the 80 hours. We're hoping we can embed that within FBLA, and we're considering putting together our school store. Actually, the school store, we're in the process of putting that together, and FBLA, those students will be part of that. Usually you think of student organizations and you think of competitions. This year we won't be competing, but they will definitely help us with setting up the school store. They're going to go to a spring conference to get an idea of what it's about. We needed to have 5 students to start a chapter, and we had 20 plus students, and we had there are quite a few students that are very engaged in it, and we're excited, have asked us in the past to set this up. So we're excited to see how this goes moving forward. Let's see let's see, I guess I'll scoot from there then. The criminal justice. So you mentioned the criminal justice. This one has been a local pathway for quite a while, and they have done an extraordinary job. Their industry partners it's unbelievable how many industry partners they have coming into school to work with them. So what we're looking at is instead trying to make this a regular CTE program. So the courses would be Introduction to Criminal Justice, which has been in place. Forensics, again, we're hoping to use that science teacher to teach that course. That's what most other districts are doing. And then Law and Society, and then they have their electives and they can choose those, the Criminal Justice, 21st Century, AP Psych, AP US Government. The credential for this one, they need to have National Incident Management System training. And when I first read that, I'm like, what is that? It's just 2 hours of CEU credit. And that's not bad, okay, with FEMA. And then you can do it independently. And then the other piece of that is either the NOCD, which is the industry credentials. It's kind of the leading provider of industry credentials, and it's tough. So that's either we'll take that or the precision exam. So there's quite a bit of prep for that. But I think they'll be great. Everything is in place again for that one. And then to our next one, this is the one we were super excited about too, because we didn't realize how close we were. So this is this new program is a proposed music technologist, which we decided was kind of, I don't know if that was going to get them too excited to get into this program. So we thought we would just call it maybe music production, but what it is, that's the standard. What you have to have are 3 years of sequential core music performance classes, which we have. So the concert, chorus, vocal ensemble, symphonic band, and then the 3 courses of music technology. And we already have 2 in place. We have the music production engineering EEP, again, that concurrent enrollment with Rick, that's in place, and that's a semester course. And then the next level, we're hoping to have the next level be an EP. We know it's possible. It's just a matter of the process of getting that set up. And then the last one is music production level 3, and that most likely won't be an EP because there's not a need. So the credential for this one is the AP Music Theory exam or concurrent enrollment, which we have with Rick. Okay. Now I'm gonna turn it over to our to Miss Nicole Noble. And
hi, everyone. I'm Nicole Noble, Science Department Chair from the high school. So the proposed bioscience pathway is going to culminate in a biotechnology certificate for our students. The level 1 course is Introduction to Biotechnology. During that course, students will receive an OSHA 10 certification. In the level 2 course, that's Issues in Biotech that we run EEP with URI. Those students will receive, they do have to, I think, receive 70% or better on the exam, but they receive 3 URI credits for Introduction to Issues in Biotech. For the level 3 capstone course, we are going to be doing a NOCTI credential. It's a biotechnology certificate, which also has an option if the students opt to, I'm not sure what the payment would be if it's them personally or if it's the school, but there's a 3 credit hour elective on top of the credential through, I believe it's Excelsior College. They're associated with NOCTI. So there's a lot of opportunity within the program for them to receive credentials and to receive college credit. We also have so many good partners we've started working with already. We just went out to URI and met with the professor of the Issues in Biotechnology course. We have some good work planned with Roger Williams and their Marine Sciences Lab. And with the new, I was super excited when I heard that Rhode Island is now a technology hub that was just announced recently. So I think there's going to be a lot going into biotech in our state in the coming years.
So one second, Ms. Noble, while you're up there, you can take this off the time, but since she's here, I did just want to mention, and you have the rankings, and we were looking at the various assessment results, and we, still did very well over, but the one place that we were still number 1 is in high school science. So Ms. Noble is the department chair. Thank you.
Okay, so the CTE Board of Trustees has approved the use of up to 10% of our allocated Perkins funding to support our middle school exploration activities and programs. And I believe that first came into place last year was the first year that we did that. So Miss Margie Brennan, who is a superstar at all things as well, but she has been a huge help in us working together with both she and then their art teachers, their current art teachers, and their 21st century skills teacher there. And we've made a really concerted effort to create developmentally appropriate curriculum. So that sort of ties in and introduces the concepts of each of our current pathways. So that's been in the works since it was sort of preliminary last year, but we've really had a great strong effort this year, and the students seem very engaged with it. So that's been wonderful. Part of that moving forward is that it's part of what the, RIAD has their middle school landscape analysis. And actually, even in our applications, this is the first I've ever seen, but they're making we have to make very strong connections with how we're tying our middle school curriculum to the high school pathways. And I think part of what we're seeing too is that our kids are very high achieving and they sort of have their own pathway in their head, whether by the time they make it to the high school. So that doesn't really allow for the exploration piece. Again, why I believe the that focus on, let's not have kids pick immediately what they want to do and feel tied to it, because a CTE program is essentially only 3 consecutive courses. So we do have multiple kids who are enrolled in more than one program currently, and we just don't want students in our middle school grades to limit themselves without seeing what these other opportunities are. So that's where we are with the middle school. And then we have our upcoming open house. We found that last year it was a huge success. We're doing it a little bit later than we did last year. Part of that is with recommendations from Dr. Viveros as far as when students are enrolling in courses. And we want to ensure that students have, again, gone through some of the process with the middle school and have time to meet with their counselors, both at the high school and the middle school, so that they can make those decisions. But we had, I think, over 50 families last year that came to open house. So we're looking forward to continuing that success for this year. Any questions?
Okay.
I'll go first.
TikTok.
I don't have a question, I have a comment, and I'll keep them brief. This is the subject in our schools that I'm most excited about. And I just wanted to take my time and just commend you, Paige and Diane. Because when I first started on the school committee, what seems like an eternity ago, 5 years ago, we had a couple programs, and to see the growth and the potential growth that we have right now is just testament to you being at the high school, you coming into this position and seeing where we're at right now. So I just wanted to take the time.
Thanks so much. It's actually so exciting to be in this position right now, and a incredible team. And with the high school and Jeff having had previous experience with CTs and being all aboard, it's really been very exciting.
Yeah,
We say that less as we start looking at these daunting applications, but we're still very excited.
But it's the God honest truth. A program like this changed my life in high school. And had it not been for them, I probably wouldn't. If it wasn't for that and a multitude of other things, but if it changed my life, and to be able to provide that to all students and making such a wider range of subjects is just it's life changing. So I commend you for it.
Great, thank you.
I just have a quick question. Why can't we make personal finance a required course of every student? And the reason I ask that is obvious, because personal finance, it contains so many life skills. And
Well, financial literacy is a requirement.
Understand what personal finance, I'm thinking of what's a mortgage all about, a loan. Okay.
And that is a requirement. And I think what we're looking to do
That was
is,
gonna be my fault.
Yeah.
Because I thought the state did require that.
it does. And with the new state regulations, that will be essentially proficiency based and not credit based. So what we're looking to do is make sure that everyone has the same baseline with their financial literacy. And then this will dive more deeply into what they're going, the business world essentially, as opposed to just personal finance.
Just to foot stomp what Carlos said, we are absolutely lucky as a department and as a district to have you guys in your team and have your passion, which you clearly bring. Always appreciate it and happy to have you on our team.
Thanks so much.
Question, with the new curriculum that you have brought about, have you looked at the interest level to ensure that we have students both in district and possibly out of district that are interested?
Yes, we looked at both what the state's reporting, and then more importantly for us is what are our students looking for. And we have talked about for a couple of years, or since I started in here, that business I feel has been something that it's a shame that we haven't had that in the past. So moving forward, we'd love to tie it, again, make that more with more electives, tie in the arts that we're currently doing with the marketing. There's so much to it. And we have a lot of students, and I don't have the number, but who leave Portsmouth High School and go to college for business and then come back and share with us that we didn't have any idea what this was. And so we hesitated in looking at the Rhode Island standards of how do we want to word this or name it really, and what's our focus? Because sometimes if you say business finance, we could turn off some students, and we really want to keep it open so that it's going to have, even within the electives, opportunities for students to, some of the entrepreneurship classes that they're doing now is they're making the business plans for this school store. And that is something that's going to be absolutely phenomenal once we get it up and going. And while you want to start that right this minute, we do have some work to put in place for that. But a big component of that too, Now we've got so many kids involved that student council wants to be a part of it. Life skills is going to be a huge part of working with us for helping to run the store. We have students who are designing their own T-shirts to potentially sell. Mrs. Crease went to Pontiac recently to look at their school store to see what they were doing. And that's really all being generated from students. So we know that we all know that if we tell kids, no, you're going to love this, it's going to be so much fun, no one's going to like it. So we're trying to be really like, let them sort of take the lead on how they want to do it and then just give them the support for it.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And then with the closing of some CTEs at the Rogers School, I know we had talked about beforehand. Did you look at any of those that they were discontinuing that still seem to have interest that we might want to take on in the future?
So my most recent meeting with a regional, with superintendents for the CTE programs is they're not currently.
Yeah,
they're
so
not closing.
And what
Oh,
you might have seen reference
okay.
to is in the new building design. I think it's.
That's what they were saying, they couldn't-
College Automotive, there needs to be kind of reworking of where they're going to fit them. We don't think they plan on actually closing those programs down.
Oh,
It
good.
just has to do more with the building design.
Oh, good. No, that's great to hear and that our students can still
Yes.
gain that knowledge. Thank you.
Yeah, this is so wonderful to see, and I'm really excited about the new bioscience. I was just looking at the governor's designation as it's the ocean technology. So I just like keep reminding us that I see the connection with agriculture, but there's so many great partners, even in Portsmouth. 401 Tech Bridge is just like quarter mile down the road. That hopefully that ocean connection can be really a pivotal part of that.
And that's why we so nicely invited Nicole, because I would love to say I knew all about this, but I'm not yet familiar.
One of the main 4 areas of the biotech program is marine science, and so is blue biotech. And so I think that there's a huge opportunity for that here. The labs they have over at Roger Williams, where they're working with corals and algae. I mean, it's amazing, and we've been invited to come over into the labs and potentially foster some internships and things. As far as the agricultural side of it, that's a whole, like the green biotech side. We are going to be working with the ag farm. I've been speaking with Margie Brennan and trying to work out some ways to get our kids at the high school involved. So, and then, I mean, just to wrap it up, I guess the other 2 quadrants of the biotech that we would be looking for partners in is there's the medical side, which is the red biotech, and then there's also the white, which is industrial. So more like food production and things like that, like detergents and things. So there's so many areas of it. The kids are super excited.
Great, thank you. So
Ms. McDade?
wonderful.
I just want to say congratulations and thank you. This is really exciting stuff. And it's great to hear about.
Get a lot of support.
Okay, so I have 2 questions. One is on the proposed music technologist pathway, if you could bring that up. So when we were there at Dr. Kenworthy and I were there for the dedication of the auditorium, you know, they have that incredible tech sound system, et cetera. And I'm just curious why we don't include in here theater tech, right? Because that's a very I mean, I think there's a lot of demand and interest, and I was talking to Ms. Brennan, who was saying, you know, if you know how to run this, you can get hired to run shows, et cetera. So I just don't, I see music, and I don't see theater. Why are we not including theater?
So I really was on a time limit, but that is a huge piece of what we're doing. So the people who initially trained Shelley and maybe Margie to come down and do that. The light and sound board is one of the best in the state, if not the best in the state. So one of the reasons, some good questions that we had from Ted Roush were like, okay, but how do I do this work-based learning thing? Because that can be intimidating for a new program. And until you really sort of delve into it and see that there's 5 different buckets you can pick out of, and all their performances and all the things they do. But a big piece of this, and our music department is a huge fan of this as well, is we have some incredibly talented students who, leaving there, having been trained in that board, the light and sound board, would be a tremendous asset for them. So that is in the works.
But I guess maybe it's just a marketing thing, but if I were to, you know, if I look at this as an incoming student and I see music, I don't see the word theater anywhere. So I'm just wondering, is there any way and maybe it's not allowed in this CTE, but where we sort of say music/theater production or something, it just seems to me that it might turn students off who don't have the music aspect, but they might really be interested in technical theater. So that was my
I
only.
wonder if perhaps we could offer some sort of elective in that area moving forward, because for us, it's so driven by the RIDE standards.
So
that
you
are
can't
approved.
include it here,
So
is what
this
I'm
is-
hearing.
No, this is actually the verbiage right off of the RIDE website.
Okay.
So we're trying to be creative and say like, so these are the core courses, but we really do have a pretty dynamic music program. And with a lot of the theater being done outside of the school day. So those are also pieces that can be incorporated, but as far as the core courses, these are decided by RIDE.
Okay, so they can't really include it then. All right, so my second question then is, and I don't really know where this stands with graduation requirements and, projects versus portfolios versus experience. How does this fit into the graduation requirement for all that? Do they have to do the CTE? Can they do their senior project or where does this all fit in with that?
They would not have to, as a completer of a CTE program pathway, they would not have to do any other additional.
The industry project for a
Exactly.
CTE program is the equivalent of a senior project. That's
So
how.
they wouldn't have to do a senior project if
even-
they do
So
the
that
industry.
Yeah.
industry portfolio.
Okay, that was my
Even,
question.
even currently, that's how it works. for
Okay, so you do either the senior project.
And that's also really, there is a big focus and we report quarterly to RIDE on the 80 hours of work-based learning.
Okay.
And
It's
that's
the, it's the
essentially-
equivalent as far as everything that's put
Right,
into it.
so that would really reduce our demand. I'm assuming with all these CTE students, that will take 30% of the class out from having to do a senior project. Okay. Other questions? Great, thank you go ahead.
So this is language from RIDE, like post-secondary credit from Rick. So like you don't have a choice to work with like.
It's interesting,
RISD.
some of them do say just post-secondary concurrent or dual enrollment courses. This in particular is from Rick, and there are new programs like, interestingly, a brand new major for instance, at Providence College is music technology.
Mhm.
There's another brand new one, there was another one at
RISD.
well, those are, I think, were established, but in this area, yeah, so they actually say from Rick, because of their really comprehensive music program that they currently offer, they give us a list of like, out of these 200 classes, 200 level classes, you can pick one. So like, we currently have a history of rock and roll, but at Rick, they offer an EP component of that, but it's history of pop or history of jazz. So looking to be able to offer those courses as well, because that's really where the kids are passionate.
Yeah, I just think Rhode Island has so many great, like RISD that have wonderful course, but I don't know if it meets the requirement. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate all the work and effort. All right. Those were two awesome sets of presentations and really appreciate the information and hope that gets out to the community. Can I have approval of school committee minutes, please?
School committee meeting minutes of October 10th. And the executive session meeting minutes of October 10th.
Second.
Any changes, additions, corrections? All in favor? Any opposed? Unanimous 6-0. Can I have a motion for the consent agenda?
Second.
All in favor? Unanimous 6-0. This is a discuss item only, our 2024 legislative priorities. Mr. Carriero, do you need to make your
I
statement?
do, I've let legal counsel and the chair and the superintendent know I do need to recuse myself from this conversation, so I will take a seat in the audience.
Okay. So we have as backup our last year's legislative priorities. I mentioned the three things that RICAS put forward. How we usually handle this is we take some suggestion and ideas, we go back, we write them up, and then we'll bring them forward for approval before we have our joint session with the town.
That's what I
When
was
is that?
going to
Go ahead.
clarify, because I've put it in writing, but just so that everybody is clear. That is being moved up a month, so typically we do the joint town council school committee meeting and invite legislators to that in January. We're gonna set it, but we also do the kickoff to the budget process. We're gonna the town council would like us to separate those this year, so Budget will kick off in January, but we're going to do the joint legislative session on Monday, December 11th
Monday.
at 7 PM
December
here.
11th.
It's a regularly scheduled town council meeting,
Yeah,
but it will also be that joint session with the
But
legislators.
now that since we're introducing this topic end of October, we have time
That's
in
why I'm
November
bringing
for
it
us to bring them forward for consideration. So this is really just a throw your ideas out for discussion, and we want to hear from admin any suggestions that they think we should have on here. Do you guys want to start?
We can definitely start, and you
Okay.
alluded to it earlier. I think, and it did make the legislative discussions last year, but just didn't, get to a complete bill. But I think universal free breakfast and lunch at this point, it just has to happen. So, we had a couple of years with COVID and then the pandemic where it was in place. Many other states have, just within their state budget, included it. Rhode Island has not been able to do that yet. And I think honestly, more than anything, it's just causing confusion with our film. A lot of people that we talk to believe that it happened, and it's probably just a long time coming at this point.
Ms. Blank?
The number 3, the age appropriate career development for a green economy. Can we have it be green and blue economy?
This is last year's, so we don't have to have any of these up there if we want, or we can have them repeated. So you're wanting to have number 3 repeated
Yes, I think that's
for
a,
green and blue economy,
Yeah.
okay? Number 3, green and blue. And what we've tried to do in the past is really not have 20 of these, but really sort of say, here's our top 5, or here's our, Ms. McDade, did you have some, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was going to suggest, last year there was the bill in the legislature that would have raised the minimum reimbursement levels. We're currently at 35, and it would gone to, they proposed 40, then it was going to go back to 37, and they never got that passed. And I asked at RIDECAST, is there any chance of that going forward this year? And that basically got shut down. They said, well, if they're going to hand out bond money earlier, they're probably not going to raise the minimum levels. But I mean, so they implied there wasn't a really kind of shot for that happening, but we
Yeah.
could,
I
that
think
was something
we
we
should take a
wanted
shot
last
at it,
year.
I think.
We should.
I think we
what?
should include it and take a shot at it.
So up to like at least 37 and a half or
So I'd
something, or
Go
40.
for 40 or 45. I mean, shoot
Raise
for
minimum.
45 and that
Okay,
was
we can put it
part
in
of a
and then we'll
discussion at
discuss
one
it
point,
next
yeah.
meeting. So raise minimum to 40 or 45% for state approved construction school projects, okay? Yes.
Well, one question on number 5, high-speed internet. What's that council done so far? And then, especially with regard to Aquidneck Island. And secondly, with the infrastructure bill that was passed last year, I think it was, there's a substantial amount of money in that for providing broadband assistance. I think principally for rural areas, I don't know, but there must be some amount of money that's coming Rhode Island's way. So I just.
Yeah, I wish Mr. Costa was here for that, but I had looked at that one as well and assumed that that's still a need, right?
Right.
Yeah. So that can definitely stay on the list and we can expand it certainly.
Emphasize it.
So what about number 4 here, school waste recycling and waste removal? I don't know what happened with that. If there was additional, is that something we need to look into to see if that happened?
No, it wasn't funded, but as a district, we're certainly making progress, though. We're working with Clean Ocean Access and we're looking
Right.
to actually have it be K-12 this year. So we've already brought them on to support our schools. They're currently planning meetings with each of the schools just to kind of see what would that look like, at a kindergarten, K-1-2 level, and then what does it look like at our high school? But I feel like we're moving forward in that area.
So that might be an one we could,
Yeah.
if
yeah.
we're wanting to put either universal free lunch or something
Right, we're
else on here.
composting in our kitchens and and
Okay.
then in our lunchrooms. I would say that number 2, the ESSA determination process, and Ms. Shea, you had walked out, so I was going to mention it, but that's definitely something that I feel like is still, it really is still hurting us. So maybe you can speak a little bit to that, but that's something I would love to.
Or if there's
continue to see.
different language that we need in here,
Yeah.
that could be the other thing too, more current.
I think the language is the same. It's where we get hit is when we have a student who moves into town and is here for a short term and it's determined that they're our student. But then they leave us and they're still determined to be our student, even if they're not living here. Because they've been determined to be ours. So they stay ours until the decision-making process says they're no longer ours. So when they're in and out of district placement, we continue to fund that tuition.
Right,
Whether they're
even though they've
physically
only
living
maybe
here
been
or
here
not.
for a couple of months.
Correct.
Right, and
Right.
it seems as though they're quick to say, yes,
Right.
Portsmouth, but never quick to say, okay, we'll take them off. So it's like we're getting all of these students and then we're keeping them, whether
Even
they,
though they're not in the district.
right,
Correct.
I
right.
think, it might be useful for this if we had like a little chart or a little data to put in to show our legislators, to kind of back that up. So maybe that could be a nice addition without names, or just to kind of show that it really is a problem, like average length of stay,
Mhm.
average
Yeah.
length of time recorded as a Portsmouth student,
We can work on that. We
maybe.
can work on that.
If it's
think
too
that's
hard,
great.
I was just thinking it
Good
might
idea.
make the point to them.
Absolutely.
I think that's a good idea because we can convince our own legislators, but then they have to go in turn convince lots of other legislators to go along with whatever new legislation's required. So having that kind of information and background, I think would be helpful for them.
And to add to that, it's got to be an issue for other districts as well, that it's not just, I think it would be helpful to have backup, not just about how it affects us specifically, but how it affects other districts too.
And understanding that even if it is, a small number of students, relatively speaking, each one of those students comes with a pretty high tuition bill.
Right.
So, we're talking between $50,000 and $70,000, never
Per
mind the
student.
transportation part of that, right? That's just the tuition. So
Right.
it's a significant number.
And that I think we ought to spell out too.
Mhm.
Yeah, okay, good. So you guys will work on that one. What about number one still? I know they funded high cost special ed more this last budget. I mean, what do you?
Dara, what do you think?
They
I
gave
feel
us-
like we did, as Dr. Coleman said, we did see an increase there, right? Is it just kind of keeping it on the forefront, right?
Like double the money that they need to fully funded, so
The high cost is still an issue and statewide transportation hasn't changed at all. Allocating state funds for okay, this is a big one where they did say that they might be looking at the funding formula reform and that this, how to hold or how to capture poverty levels in a district is really, it sounds like that's the crucial thing. Like we have higher poverty levels in Portsmouth that aren't captured by the automatic SNAP benefits because they're not necessarily automatically enrolled. So what are your thoughts on that?
I don't know what the best methods are to capture poverty.
But a better method.
The big problem is with them cutting our budget every year, and I'm pretty certain it's gonna happen again this year in the order of 200,000 or so. It's not like we can adjust quickly to those kinds of, because, it's one thing if you can adapt to your declining enrollment and eliminate teachers if that's what you have to do, but it doesn't work that way. If we lose 10 students, that's sprinkled throughout the school district. It doesn't represent the need to close a class. And so we're getting penalized for something we can do very little about, and yet we still have all the infrastructure and expenses that are required to maintain the school throughout the year. So there have always been problems with the funding formula, but I suspect I'm not optimistic it's gonna change.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have a strong thought on a better way to capture poverty, but what I do have a strong feeling on is that they should do something with the formula to stop the gigantic swings that seem to happen year to year,
Yeah.
which are just, you put a bunch of numbers to a formula that kicks out something, and then it should be subject to a band. So there should be like a halo around that that says, okay, you're supposed to lose 7% of your aid, but we know it's crazy. Nobody could ever react to that. So we capped that at 1.5, you know, whatever,
Right.
something like that. I think something like that would be very helpful to stop exactly Fred what you're saying, which is.
what we were advocating for last year too. I remember that.
To pick last year as an example, we had, I want to say, 3 or 4 different estimates as the months rolled by. We were constantly getting new numbers. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous. And you,
Yeah, we didn't get final numbers until the end of June, which point we
After-
can't react anyway because we've
Right.
not laid off any teachers and everybody's hired and it is what it is for a whole year.
Okay,
I think we should have, in the verbiage, have a percent cap of year to year
swing.
change, yeah, of the swing.
yeah. That's easy because
And-
that's what we testified on last year.
I'm just curious, at the RIAS meeting, when they were talking about new indicators of poverty, were there, other than SNAP enrollment,
No,
or
they,
anything else that
yeah.
you were talking about?
no, they just mentioned that Ryan Pearson in particular is really interested at revisiting the funding formula. The Senate has been doing it. And they recognize that the poverty indicators weren't working appropriately, but they didn't, like, what is
Have
it?
another way of-
Is a good question, right?
I was at a RIASBO meeting recently where I think it was somebody from RIPEC who was talking about this.
Yeah.
And it's another one of those things where we'd probably don't have to reinvent the wheel. Apparently Massachusetts has a range of factors that they consider into poverty. They don't just use one thing like we did here, and that we should probably just figure out what they're doing and do that.
Right.
Yeah, RIPEC could present on their latest report, which looked at this poverty analysis. But I would suggest we improve the language on like 1C because there were a lot of things that we had.
Right, I agree. Yeah, that's,
One thing is that we definitely need more transparency, like Terry Cordovan had talked about, like a web-based platform to have all the information, like I remember you were getting like different variables that you just like couldn't compare to other districts. It just needs to be like very simplified of like what each part of the formula is and the amounts that districts get. I'll reiterate Fred's point that every charter school is getting an increase last year, even though, it's not like performance based. And then the state shouldn't drop below maintenance of effort or level funding. It just seems like if there's a way to prevent that whiplash and ensure that the actual pie is growing and that we are not like losing from year to year.
just as a reminder, the COVID years, the state in general, like probably most states, benefited fiscally because so much federal money poured into the state. But for years prior to that, the state was running a pretty consistent deficit, I think. I think most years we were running a deficit. So when you think about cutting the pie, it's been historically a diminishing pie. Am I correct in your?
I don't think the state's allowed to run a deficit, right? So
Well, but on the, I was thinking more of the school, well, okay.
Yeah, I think they have run a significant surplus, though, the last.
recently,
year.
they've
Right,
they've had like a
but I'm
couple
thinking going
gigantic.
back,
Yeah.
Further back.
Yeah.
When I think there was.
I think if they have a like, yes, I remember that they would do, what they call the mid-year revenue conference, and they
Right.
come out and say, oh my God, we have a $300 million hole. But then they have to then either pass a supplemental budget or cut expenditures. They have to end on they can't have like a deficit end of
Well,
the year.
yeah, okay.
Okay.
The last thing is, Senate President Ruggiero, she passed, a bill that is using the, is using the Investment in Jobs Act, like federal funding to provide, lead replacement, but it's specific to homes. So I would suggest, just because I feel like we just constantly need to be thinking about lead in our schools, and if that bill could be expanded to it's basically federal funding, so it should be available to schools as well as homeowners.
Or public institutions, something
Yeah.
like that. Mhm. Could you write that up?
Mhm.
Okay, so and we'll have all these on for draft. What about, with ESSER funding ending? I mean, I know that that's been huge in supporting summer schools and our interventionists and things like that. Is there something that I mean, I think we've spent ours, I'm not, don't know if there's anything there, but think about that. Yeah. Okay, so we have a bunch, in no particular order, but we'll put them all together. And then, circulate the draft, and then we can discuss that and maybe winnow it down to our top, or, more of our priorities and other ones
Yeah,
then.
and I just wanted to point out too, so if you're not already thinking about the timeline, we have one meeting in November, it'll be on the 14th, right? And then, so we'll have to finalize these because the meeting on
Yeah.
the 11th with the legislators will happen before the
Second.
December 12th meeting.
Yeah,
And
so we'll finalize them in November, so. All right. So any other suggestions, but, please forward. Okay, we're done with that. Welcome back. Mr. Duro, financial reports, please, for September.
Yep, so it's still very, very early in the year. My memo summarizes a few things that I wanted to point out. You'll probably remember them from last month. We'll continue to watch, but there's nothing that's concerning me at this point.
Okay, any questions on the cover memo or there isn't really all that much. this month.
It's
So,
September, yeah.
yeah.
Way too early.
Okay, prior to adjournment, Ms. Rhodes, for our next meeting, can we put, this was a suggestion made by Ms. Skian. Maybe at the bottom of our agenda, we might put the subcommittee meetings, like if there's a climate and culture meeting or something upcoming.
Yep,
Just
start
as
doing
a-
that, and then when we send out the update.
Updates, we'll
I'll-
put them on there
I'll
too.
start it with this.
You know,
update. Yep.
public announcement kind of thing. So our next meeting is November 14th here at Town Hall. May I have a motion for adjournment, please?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Unanimous, 6-0.